There now follows an election broadcast on behalf of the Conservative Party.
This is your country, a nation created by the skill and courage of our forefathers. Whoever you are, and wherever you are, the future lies with this generation. This could be the street in which you live. Prosperous country, where security and opportunity are greater than ever before. All too soon comes the great adventure of his first school. New schools are being completed at the rate of nearly 2 each working day. In the light, airy classrooms, more and more trained teachers are devoting themselves to children's education, health, and well-being. Here, he will make his first firm friendships. The years go by. The boy grows older. He may need medical care and attention at home or in hospital. Today, this care is and must remain a first priority. All over the country, new hospitals are going up, and existing ones are being improved. The number of doctors and nurses in hospital and home is also growing, and as services develop, efficiency is growing too. But he's soon back to his normal self again, and ready for the next stage in his school life. He goes to a secondary modern school, which today plays an increasingly important part in our modern educational system, where he's given every opportunity to progress to the fullest extent of his ability, or to the traditional grammar school, which must continue to be a cornerstone of education in this country. He'll be well prepared for his future career. As he leaves his school for the last time, he'll already have talked about his career with his parents and teachers. But it may well be in the company of his friends that his choice will finally be made. Which of the many careers open to him shall he choose? By this time, someone else has a very great interest in him and his career. For our story, he chooses to become an architect. The hard work of specializing now begins, possibly at one of the many fine new technical colleges. He studies the classic architecture of the past and the clear-cut modern buildings of today. Like all young men, he dreams of the things he'd like to do. Of tearing down old and outdated houses even faster than is happening at present, and of building in their place still more clean modern homes. Homes that are bright and healthy, where, as in the new council estates and new towns, people can lead a fuller and happier life. He dreams of stepping up the progress which has already been made in providing homes for the not-so-young, specially designed, and where nursing and domestic help make it easier for them to go on living where they have their roots. But he realizes that homes aren't everything. Equally important is the purchasing power of pensions. Pensioners are sharing in the country's increasing wealth through a pension whose purchasing power has been built and is now maintained by stable prices for the first time since the war. Preparing for a career means hard and interesting work. There is always time for leisure. Leisure, correctly used, is fun and essential to a healthy mind and body. Soon enough, earning a living will occupy most of his thoughts, and the opportunity arrives to make his dreams a reality. The newlyweds find that setting up a home is quite a serious business. It's a question of not what to buy, but which to buy. Free enterprise, a rising standard of living and stable prices enable them to choose from a greater variety of goods than ever before. The refrigerator, washing machine, and television are no longer luxuries, but an essential part of their home. At first, they rent a small flat. But the buying of a house isn't the problem it was years ago. Because of the extension of mortgage facilities and the greater opportunities to save, more people than ever are becoming homeowners. His years of endeavor are well repaid, as with his wife and bride, he sees their home. We can leave him now, secure. The future of Britain is safe in his hands, and in the hands of millions like him.
Well, you've been acting in this film, haven't you?
Oh, yes.
Well, how did you enjoy it?
Oh, it's great fun, yes.
It's nice to see you in. Do you think the opportunities in this film are really real and can be achieved?
Yes, sir. If we're given full backing, I believe we can achieve these aims.
Do you think the younger generation can reach up to that opportunity?
Yes, most decidedly, yes.
Well, I'm going to discuss these matters with Edith Pitt, who's here from the Ministry of Pensions and National Insurance, one of my colleagues, and Keith Joseph, who's helped us such a lot in social and health affairs. And we'll try and have a bash at this film, if I may use that expression, and see whether we can make it live again, and see what reality there is in it. Well, now, I'd like to tell you that this is the second of our television programs, and it deals with home and social affairs. It's going to be followed by another program on work, that is relating to industry and agriculture, and all the basis of our production and wealth, and by other programs on overseas affairs and that sort of thing. But now today we have this program on home affairs, essentially. And I find in it 4 major points of our policy and philosophy. First of all, the independence and responsibility of home ownership, which you may have noticed in the housing bit. Secondly, opportunity for the young, which you may have noticed in the education bit. Thirdly, care and compassion for the old, which you may have noticed also in the film. And last, a sense of realism about the standard of living, which is the basis of all our prosperity and all the future chance of developing the social services. When I first, in relation to, you noticed that the young couple on my right decided to buy their own house. Well, we've made £100 million available for people who want to buy their own homes. Furthermore, that is, I think, a feature of our housing policy. It's added on to the achievement of building 300,000 houses a year, and in 1 year under our present Prime Minister, when he was Minister of Housing, I dare say you remember, 360,000 houses. Now we've got further, and I was discussing this with Henry Brooke, the Minister, this evening, before we came on here. We've got to add to this the program of demolition of the slums. And we hope during the next 5 years to move 1 million people from the slums. And that is our target, and that's another target we're going to achieve in exactly the same way as we did the 300,000 houses a year. Now, I think this is a much more sensible policy than putting under the councils 5 million privately rented homes with all the extravagance that that involves, which the socialists suggest. What did you think, by the way, of the old people's homes?
Well, that's so important in the care of the not so young. We know they want a place of their own, but very often it's a small, easily run place. That's what we've been providing, that's what we intend to go on providing, where there's the need.
Well, I think that came out in the film.
Yes.
Well, now I want to turn to the second point, opportunity for young, which of course is my first love, education, because I had something to do with it before. And we have built on the Education Act of 1944. Since we've been in power, we've, I think, completed, us and the local authorities, some 4,000 schools. So we've made a very considerable advance. And we've now got a four-pronged drive or program. First of all, teacher training, because the teachers are essential to get the classes down. I don't know what they're like in your area, but they're pretty big in mine.
They are in big.
Well, we've got to get the classes down, and that means 2/3 more teachers for training. Then we want to improve the university and technical college advance, because as a striving country, we've got to do that. And lastly, we've got a program which will amount to some 400 millions before 1965, which is a terrific program.
That's
That
the
is for
secondary
school
modern schools, isn't it?
What do you think of the secondary modern school in the program?
Oh, that's like our best. We've got to make more of them like that, and that's what the 400 million program will enable us to do.
You must include girls in this program. I didn't mention them. I'm terribly keen that girls get
Well, we always want
equal
girls
chance
to
of
get
training.
equal chance.
And I know a mother who's so thrilled her daughter's going to a training college for catering, and she says, I can't believe it that my girl has this chance.
Well, I've got somebody in a secondary modern school in my area who's got a grant from the county to go to the university, and I never thought that would happen. And 40% of them are now staying on in those schools. So there is real opportunity, and we must push it ahead.
Yes, and parents have never been more interested than they are today
No,
in
it's,
education.
let's make a great drive with this. But we mustn't have all comprehensive schools or authority from the top. They're like barracks or
Yes,
factories.
too big.
We can have them as experiments in some places just to see what they're like.
Yes, but
don't
then
you
that
think?
was the whole part of our philosophy, that it must be done by a local experiment and not
Yes.
from the top. Well, now, what do you think about the hospitals?
We made very good progress once we'd broken the backs of the housing and school problems. But I am glad we're going to double the rate of progress and build £50 million worth a year. But that didn't show how many extra people are working in the health service. There are more nurses and better paid, more district nurses, more home helps, more doctors too. But doctors and dentists seem to be hoping for better things. I warn you that when that Royal Commission reports on their pay, the government will be under pressure to act. You know that.
We're quite used to pressure, but it depends on the quality of the pressure, and I think in this case their claims are well justified.
Well, then
I
there's-
think we must wait for the Commission's report.
Yes. When there's this revolution in mental treatment that we've begun, that needs more social workers and more local authority homes, all this is going to need more money. But what matters surely is value for money. And that's why I welcome the Tory emphasis on efficiency
Yes.
and on better pay for managers.
Well, that matters most, of course, in dealing with the old age pensioners. You know something about them, don't you?
Yes, I know quite a bit about pensioners. I earned my living as a factory welfare officer, and part of my job, a very important part, was looking after the pension firm, dealing with them on retirement, making sure they had all they were entitled to. Then when they were retired, visiting and keeping up their interest. They love somebody to talk to. In the last 3 years, I've been helping with the much bigger job of looking after all the pensioners in the country, and there are over 5 million of them.
That's at the Ministry.
Yes, and we have looked after them, we have cared and we have helped them. Our record on pensions is very good. 3 times we've increased the rate of pension, so that now in purchasing power it's worth 11 shillings more than when we took over in 1951. And that's much better than the socialist record. Even Mr. Crossman, their pensions expert, had to admit that the pensioners had not had their share of the national cake.
They were cheated. That
Cheated,
was his word. Cheated.
Yes.
Well, now they're making even larger promises without stating the cost, aren't they?
They've promised 10 shillings to the pensioner, not for wives. But promises are so easy when you haven't responsibility. If I want to trust somebody to do a job for me, I look to the man who's done the job before and proved that he can do it, not to the one who's been given the job and failed.
Well, we give an undertaking to the old age pensioners that not only will we maintain their rate of pension in relation to the cost of living, which we have done up to date and more, going by the figures, but we also say that you will take your share of the rising prosperity of the country, which can be assured only by the pursuance of conservative policy and by the continuation of the betterment that we have brought about. That is what we propose. Now I want to ask you about the basic, which is referred to.
Well, the basic is 50 shillings. It's often said people can't live on it. We know they can't, but they don't have to. As I said, there are over 5 million pensioners in the country. They're a real cross-section. They include the well-off, the comfortably off, the not-so-well-off people. And many of them have other resources which help them to manage well. If they haven't other resources, then national assistance is available to them to supplement their pension benefit.
Do they realise about the supplement they can get?
Yes, I think there's been a little reluctance. Some people don't like the name, but we're changing the words which appear on the order book for a supplementary benefit. It will say supplement to pension or other benefit. And you know, we just increased the rates only a fortnight ago.
Yes, the value has been increased for the first time properly since 1948.
And it's a real increase. It hasn't been necessary. As prices have gone up, they've not. They've remained steady. We've improved the standard of the people who are most in need.
Well, now, what about the two schemes, the socialist scheme and our scheme? What do you say about that, the rival costs? Because I think people ought to realise that it's the public who's got to pay.
That's right. The socialist scheme, short and long term, will cost something like £700 million a year, and that's a lot of money, and as you say, somebody's got to pay for it.
Short and long term?
Yes, the two together. Under our scheme, all those people earning less than £11 a week will actually pay less in contributions now. Less. Of course, under our scheme, the other contributions and the contribution from the taxpayer will go up slightly. The socialists are putting about the idea that some of this money, this extra money, won't go to pensions. That's absolute nonsense. It isn't so much nonsense about their scheme, however, because they plan to increase contributions and taxes more than is necessary for immediate pensions and use the surplus for backdoor nationalization. The socialist plan involves higher contributions from employers, from employees, from self-employed, and from the taxpayer. More than twice as much extra as under our plan. They themselves say this is going to increase the price of goods in the shops. So people in future, if the socialist plan were ever coming into effect, would have to pay more each week in contributions, more in prices, and more in taxes, direct and indirect. These extra costs, quite apart from all the other things the socialists are promising, are bound to lead to wage claims and all that dreary round of inflation, stealing the value of the pension.
And yet they've had the source to suggest that we propose that the Exchequer should use some of the funds for other purposes.
Well, that's absolutely
It simply isn't true. It's going back into the fund. It's going to be used for the basic rate and other rates.
Every penny.
Yet under their plan, for the first 8 to 10 years, they build up such a surplus.
What about half pay on retirement?
Well, what they don't add there is it doesn't happen until the next century.
Well, what you calculate, the year 2010, is
Something
that right?
Something like that.
Well, now, we've covered, I think, the main four subjects, and our time is running out. I feel that the whole future of social reform depends entirely upon the financial basis of the country and the sound policies we adopt and paying our way and making ends meet. Some of us have dedicated our life to social reform, and we know that it's only by our policies, which are sound and do not make too many promises and are based on our experience, that we can achieve the service of our lives. This film has shown you, in one way or another, the four principles for which we stand: independence and responsibility in ownership. And I mean responsibility in ownership of every sort, responsibility. Opportunity in education for the young, and that is the basis of the future of our country. And also care and compassion for the old, and finally a sense of realism of what we can afford. It is because I believe that it is our policy that can achieve these things that I am sure will be supported by the country to whom we dedicate our service.
On the 8th of October, you are going to be asked to vote, to decide the future for your country, for your family, and for yourself. Life is better with the Conservatives. Life has been better with the Conservatives. Much better. Better for everyone. And it can be better still. Don't let the Labour Party spoil it. On the 8th of October, you are going to be asked to vote. It is your duty to your country, to your family, and to yourself that you should vote. Vote Conservative and be sure of an even better life.
That was an election broadcast on behalf of the Conservative Party.